This is the second half of the Pulsar Green Wave installation video. We've already installed the carbon filter. Now we're going to actually install the Pulsar filter. So I want to show you some key things with the Pulsar. When you take it out of the box, this bracket will most likely be upside down. I turn it this way because it's easier to install. These are 10mm head bolts that you can take loose, flip the bracket over and tighten it back down. Also on this filter, you got to keep in mind which way the flow direction arrows are facing and make sure you mount this on there the correct way. Again, we're going left to right on our installation, so that's why it's that way. Now on the top of this filter, there's some 1/4-inch plugs here. These need to be Teflon taped and screwed in tight, or if you want to install pressure gauges in these ports, you can do that as well, but make sure you seal these too. Now once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and mount this to the wall, keeping in mind that this is our inlet and we have to plumb from the carbon filter outlet to this Pulsar membrane filter inlet. Now again, on the carbon filter, we plumbed into what's called the downflow inlet. So now the upflow inlet becomes our outlet. So we're going to plumb from the upflow inlet port to the inlet of the Pulsar filter. But first, let me get this mounted to the wall, and once I get that mounted, then we'll do the plumbing. Once you have the Pulsar mounted, the inlet and the outlet on the Pulsar are 1 inch, so we supply you with some 1 inch by 3/4 stainless steel reducing bushings. So we're going to want to install these in each end now, and you can see I've already put Teflon tape on those, so we're going to go ahead and get those installed, and we'll get those tightened down and then we'll be right back. Now we need to plumb from the carbon filter into the Pulsar membrane filter, so we're going to tape up our threaded fitting so we can screw it in there. And again, make sure you get at least 5 or 6 wraps on this. It's a little less forgiving being stainless steel, so you don't have to put as much as you do with the plastic, but get that on there, and then we're going to screw this into the inlet here, and we're going to go ahead and plumb our plumbing in. Now once we've plumbed from the carbon filter to the inlet of the Pulsar filter, then we're going to install the Green Wave module now between the Pulsar and our outlet plumbing. So to do that, we're going to put a threaded nipple into this Pulsar outlet, and then we have a threaded adapter here on our outgoing pipe. Now the threaded part of the nipple that goes into the Pulsar, we're going to have to Teflon tape, but the threaded part coming out we will not, because the brass fittings have their own rubber washers that will seal that joint. So we'll go ahead and tape this nipple and get it installed, and then we'll install the actual Green Wave module. Now that we've installed our nipple and we have our threaded adapter on the outgoing plumbing, we have to put our Green Wave module in place. Now when you install the Green Wave module, it's important to look at the flow arrow. There's an arrow at the top that indicates which way the water should flow. There's a check valve in the outlet, so if you have this backwards, the water will actually stop and won't go out to the home. So you'll know for sure if you get it wrong, but make sure you have the flow arrow pointing the right direction. And then I like to go ahead and somewhat snug these brass connectors on the actual Green Wave module and then leave them loose on the other end. You can see in there, that's the rubber O-ring that's going to do the sealing. That's why we don't have to do Teflon tape on these particular thread joints. So once we've done that, now we're going to install this in place and get it snug by hand. Okay, once you have it in place and it's snug by hand, then go ahead and take your wrenches and snug it up the rest of the way. On these outer fittings, I recommend that you hold the actual fitting and snug it up. And then on these fittings, hold the actual Green Wave housing and snug it up. You don't really want to put a tool on this, you could break it. So if you just hold it with your hand, that's usually good enough. So basically that's the system installed, okay? Now what we want to do is prepare it for startup. The first thing that we would want to do is remove our Green Wave filter, and then if you have already accidentally put in your membrane filter here, you would want to take it out right now, because we want these to be empty canisters when we're actually flushing this carbon tank. So I'm going to go ahead and use the supplied wrench here and remove the Green Wave cartridge. Once you get this cartridge out, you should put it like in a Ziploc bag or something and put it to the side just so it stays somewhat sanitary. But you pull that sump off, you take the cartridge out and put it to the side. Then make sure this O-ring is lubed up, and then screw this sump right back into the housing till it's hand tight, and then use the wrench just to snug it maybe a little 1/8 of a turn more. And then again, if you've put your Pulsar filter in, go ahead and take that out now. Now once we've done that, we're going to put our carbon filter in the bypass position where the actual handles are pointing towards each other, and then we want to go ahead and install our sediment filter. So go ahead and pull this sump off now. I think I just got, hand tight. And then if you can look on the sump here, we have an O-ring that seals the sump and to the housing, and then in the bottom of this sump there's actually a little nub in there, and that nub is what centers this filter within the sump. See that in there? So what we're going to do is we're going to install this to make sure that nub goes right in the center of the filter, and then we're going to spin this filter up on the housing. And it should spin in by hand. If it doesn't, wiggle it a little bit and it'll center the filter in there, and then it'll spin all the way up, and you'll feel it touch off and stop by hand. And once it does that, then we can go ahead and snug it up a little bit further with the wrench. Now that the filter's in there and we've taken our 2 filters out here and we have our system in bypass, we're going to open up a spigot downstream or a faucet, and we're going to bleed all the air out of all these housings and lines and the bypass. So we'll go ahead and turn the water on slowly. And then we'll let that run until it runs clear and there's no air downstream. Once it runs clear, there's no air downstream, then we can actually push our red pressure relief button here and make sure there's no air in this filter. It should just be water coming out of here once it's full. And once you have that, then now we need to go ahead and start flushing the carbon filter. So to do that, if we've already filled this with water, then we can just slowly open both of these until they're fully open. Now if this is not filled with water, you're going to want to crack these open and let it run for a little bit, and then crack them a little bit more and let it run for a little bit. You'll be able to tell if you're getting too much water too fast, because you get a real loud knock noise in here. But the idea is we don't want so much pressure in here that it could actually damage that inner distributor tube. So if you haven't filled this with water already, then open these pretty slowly. And you should go kind of slow anyway, even if it is filled with water, because there will be a little bit of air in here that we don't want to just slam down the line. So open these slowly until you get them fully open and all the air out of the tank. Once you've done that, then we're going to go to your open spigot or faucet, and then, like I said, use a white styrofoam cup or a white plastic cup and check that water. It's going to look somewhat like tinted glass when it first comes out. So run it until it's actually clear and you don't see any kind of discoloration at all. Once you've done that, then you can say that the carbon filter has actually been flushed, and then we can move on to install the rest of our cartridges. So run that until it's clear. Once it's clear, go ahead and shut off your inlet water. Leave that spigot open just to relieve the pressure. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to shut the inlet back off. We'll let the pressure release down line, and now we're going to install our Pulsar membrane filter, and then we'll install our Green Wave module. So now keep in mind, this is going to be full of water, so when you take this loose, have a bucket or something here to catch the water when you take it loose. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. You take it loose by taking the clamp loose, spin it loose, and then you can actually flip it out. It comes off and the whole sump will come out. Now the sump has a sealing O-ring in the top, okay? And you're going to want to take some silicone grease and lube that up. And I'm going to do that now. And then just put it back in there for now, and then we're going to install the membrane filter. Now, the membrane filter has two O-rings on top. This is a pretty sanitary filter. It's not a bad practice to wear gloves. I'm not wearing them for the purpose of this video, but if you wore plastic gloves, it wouldn't be a bad idea when dealing with this particular filter. We're going to want to take some food grade silicone grease, or again corn oil or vegetable oil, and lube these O-rings up on the top. And then in the bottom of this sump, or in the bottom of this housing, there's actually a cylinder in here that will accept this. So you're going to want to put that right there in that cylinder and then push it all the way up until it stops. And it'll hold itself in there. Now we're going to put the sump over top of it and put the clamp back on. I'm going to go ahead and get the clamp somewhat in place just so it's a little bit easier on us. Put the sump over it. Get it all the way up there so the clamp will fit around it. And you may want to use a helper here, because it's not easy. I've done it a bunch of times and I'm still not really good at it. So it's kind of hard to hold it in place and get this clamp started. So you may want to use a helper, like I said. But you're going to want to tighten this up as tight as you can get it by hand. Typically you don't need to go any tighter than that. If you end up getting a drip, you can go a little tighter, but usually you don't need to go any tighter than that. At this point, I would turn the water back on and go ahead and flush this filter again. Maybe just for a few seconds just to blow the air out. And then once you do that, we'll shut the water off again so we can put our final canister in. So once you flush this for a little bit and you flush the air out, then go ahead and shut that water off again, open the spigot and let the pressure off, and then we'll go ahead and put our Green Wave cartridge in now. Take the supplied wrench and loosen it, and if any of this stuff is really tight and you can't get it loose, then you may still have pressure on it. So it's a good idea to check that again if it's really tight, because it should come off pretty easily. And as long as you got that spigot open downstream and nothing's coming out, you're going to get a little bit of water here coming out, but it shouldn't be extreme pressure. So we're going to take that sump down and then take your cartridge out of your Ziploc and put it back in there. And again, if you need any grease here, go ahead and add that now. Run that back on until it's hand tight. And then take your wrench and snug it just a little bit more, maybe a little 1/8 of a turn or so. And then now slowly turn your water back on with the spigot open downstream and let this fill up. You're going to let the water run downstream until it runs clear. Once it runs clear, then the system's installed and ready to go. Be sure you keep your wrenches around close. This particular filter is designed to last 2 months. That's on regular household usage. If you're running other stuff, topping pools off or spas or things like that, it's not going to last as long. Or if your water quality is really bad, it's not going to last as long. The Pulsar filter and the sediment filter will be changed once a year. So you can refer to your owner's manual for that. It gives you a step-by-step instructions how to change those two, or you can use this video obviously to change those two. The carbon in this tank should last anywhere from 5 to 7 years. At that point, when you go to replace that, there's another video that explains how to replace this carbon. This completes the Green Wave Pulsar installation. If you have any other questions and concerns, please give us a call.